You're listening to the NABS Now Podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the NABS Now Podcast. This is your podcast co-host, Izzy Bailey. We're sadly down one podcast co-host. Q is not joining us today. He has some sort of bug or gunk or something, so he can't be here, but we're thinking of him. But I have some lovely guests with me here today. I have Manahil Joffrey and I have Stephanie Martin. So I'm gonna just get right into the introductions because Q is usually the one who does all the fun banter, and I don't think I could live up to his standard. So, Manahil, do you want to give a brief introduction? I know this is kind of a big moment. You used to host this podcast, and so I'm so honored to have you back and get to be in conversation with you. But yeah, I'm gonna pass it off for a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks so much, Izzy. It is awesome to be back and seeing NABS now thriving. I back in the day did a little bit of co-hosting, so it's super cool to see how you guys are taking it over and doing such an awesome job. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Manahil Joffrey. I was the former first vice president of NABS, and now doing a lot of stuff within the NFB more broadly. I am serving as the treasurer of my local Empire chapter in New York State, as well as doing a lot of initiatives with the National Employment Committee. Yeah, and it's super cool, especially with our conversation today. I remember I hosted a conversation just like this 3 years ago. So crazy full circle moment.
Oh, that is. Thank you for sharing that. Stephanie, would you like to give a brief introduction? I know you have a long legacy of NFB involvement, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you, Izzy. My name is Stephanie Martin. I joined the Federation about 15 years ago. I found it through receiving a Louisiana State scholarship and attended my first state convention, and I haven't looked back since. Through that time, I was involved with our Louisiana Students Division and was president of Labs. Most recently, I was secretary of the North Central chapter in Louisiana. Now I have started my second year as president. I also work with blind students in elementary school as a para/transcriber for various ages. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I did not start at the top by introducing the topic. So again, Q, we're struggling here without you. I'm sorry. Today we are talking about just NFB post-grad and the building blocks of NFB, clearing up any confusion that one might have about how to stay involved after you're no longer a student. So I'm going to start right off. For students who might feel a little bit overwhelmed and not really sure how to approach being involved with the NFB, how would you break down the difference between local chapters, state affiliates, national divisions, and how could students sort of plug into each of these levels? I'm going to start with Manahil.
Yeah, no, great question. So I think when you first get involved with the Federation, it's a little bit of alphabet soup, right? As you mentioned, there's divisions, chapters, the affiliate level, national level, etc. And it can get really confusing. So I think clarifying it is super important. So I look at it like this. You have the national organization that is kind of the top of the pyramid. It is what sets our national policies, etc. So is kind of the national organizations that all the affiliates follow and get advised by. Then in the national organization, you have things such as divisions, groups, and committees. Divisions are organized bodies that have a constitution or are organized around various different groups. For example, we have the student division, as you probably are familiar with if you're watching this podcast. We have other things like the lawyer division and the blind Black leaders division, etc. So for committees, we have other different interest groups, again, like that, really focusing on targeted tasks, for example, the employment committee. And then for groups, we have small interest groups on various different topics. That kind of structure is also mirrored on the affiliate level. So each state has a local affiliate, and in that affiliate that is in each state, you have a similar structure depending on the state, with divisions, committees, and groups, but also individual chapters, which kind of breaks up the affiliates into even smaller chunks. So it gets more granular as you go down the pyramid. So that's a little easy way to think about it, if that made sense. I bet Stephanie can add anything I missed with all her experience and all of them.
Yeah, thank you, Manahil. Stephanie, same question, and I wasn't sure if you had similar thoughts or advice for folks who are looking to join, especially students or people who are post-graduation, and maybe how to break that down a little bit.
Definitely. The overall pyramid that was discussed, that was a great explanation. I will also add that some affiliates are going to be bigger than others and have more ways to get involved through divisions and chapters. And the best way to find out about your affiliate is to look at your affiliate website. And there is a pattern for every affiliate. It starts with NFB, the abbreviation of your state.org. So Louisiana would be nfbla.org. Now, Florida is slightly different, and there may be some other states similar that instead of the FL, it actually spells out Florida, nfbflorida.org. And so that would be a great way to look at your state as a whole and find your local chapters, what divisions are available, and that will help you get involved locally, and then you can branch out nationally. And personally, I would get involved as a student and not wait until after you graduate, because the divisions and local chapters can be very helpful in figuring out issues as they arise, not just for the student division, but people that might be in your area, whether it's in the area of your school or your hometown when you go back. Some chapters may even have a Zoom part of their meeting. So that way, if you might be with a chapter in your hometown, but while you're at school, you might be able to attend that, or vice versa. If there's a chapter where you go to school, when you go home for the summer, you might be able to still attend. And with the divisions, I would look to see if there's a division closely related to your career or any interests. That way you can talk to blind people who have been there and done that, who have gone to school, who have started working and doing what you are interested in doing. And to go along with the chapters and the affiliate, if there is not a local chapter in your area, many states will have what they call an at-large chapter. So that will cover a wide range of the state that does not have chapters close by. And I'm pretty sure those meetings are held virtually. I have not personally been a part of an at-large chapter, but I know many states have them for their more rural areas that do not have chapters.
That's great advice. Thank you. And I love the spirit of, checking with your state to see what they have to offer because I know I can attest. My first encounter with the NFB was as a scholarship recipient and going to national convention and in talking to people and trying to figure out how to get involved. I got a lot of mixed messaging of, oh, well, you'll probably have to, find your local chapter. And being from Maine, shout out Maine, we're very small, and so it looks a little bit different than maybe some of the larger states would look. And so I really love the individualized approach of finding what works best for the state and looking to them to see how you should approach. I really appreciate that. You did answer this question a little bit already, but for both of you, what would your advice be for those who maybe don't have a local chapter or an active state affiliate presence? How would you approach being involved with the Federation?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this question. So, actually, how I got started in the Federation, I was a national scholarship winner in 21, and where I really found refuge was in NABS. So, winning the scholarship, you get exposed to so many different people on the national level, and there were some great NABS people in my scholarship class. Huge shout out to Kinshik Tella. And by having that exposure, I was able to, really get roped in with the happenings of NABS, fall in love with the um, Federation philosophy and everything that the Federation was about. I had very limited exposure to other blind people before then. So just sinking my teeth into and getting exposed to such a great organization around people that I felt understood me. I was a um, new college student that was actively losing a lot of my vision and was very new to using my cane, and finding a community of people that were around my age that were equally as ambitious was honestly super necessary for me at that time, and I'm super grateful for NABS. So I say if you don't feel belonging in your state affiliate, that's okay. And I have heard from multiple people that it can be normal. And I really hope that whoever you are doesn't get dissuaded by the Federation in that aspect. Please keep trying. um, you know, try to either get involved with other states nationally, right? The biggest thing is to find the people, and wherever that is that you're involved, will come later, right? So don't feel like, oh, because I'm from New York, I need to be involved with only New York stuff. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that I'll say is keep talking to people, don't get discouraged. And once you find people that click, I promise you'll find a community and you'll never look back.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Manahil. I feel like a big takeaway that I got from that is there will always be a place for you,
Yes.
um, even if it's not within a state affiliate or, it looks different for everybody. Thank you for speaking to that. Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on involvement either with state affiliate or beyond, or if there isn't really a presence in the state affiliate?
Yes. I have a slightly different perspective. I am blessed with a great affiliate in Louisiana. And like I mentioned in my introduction to the NFB was through a Louisiana State student scholarship when I was an undergrad. It took a couple years of going to state convention and being involved with labs before I got even more involved when I moved to Ruston to go to graduate school. That is when I really stepped up my involvement in the Federation and going to chapter meetings and introducing myself to people and networking. During that time, since I was going to graduate school and I was going for education, those were the divisions I was attending. The Teachers of Blind Students division, and some getting involved with parents, even though I don't have kids, being around different programs that work with kids, since that's what I wanted to do. I do have a wonderful affiliate, but it's also helpful to get involved in other ways, such as the divisions. Because if you want to be a lawyer, what better way to network than to attend the blind lawyers division and meet people who have been there and done that? And that might be your place. Or there's a variety of groups, whether it be for your career or interest or faith. There are several places for you, even if it's not at your local level, but maybe the national level. And it's always wonderful to be able to meet new people at national conventions, state conventions, and different events throughout the year that you can learn and grow.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that's great advice. I want to ask a little bit more about, your individual involvement. So I would like to hear a little bit more about some of your maybe personal strengths or skills that might have led you or set you up for success in your involvement and what it looks like today.
When I I stepped down from my position in NABS last year, and I was frankly terrified because, as I mentioned before, then I didn't have the best relationship with my affiliate at the time. I didn't, my entire identity in the federation was NABS. Whenever people like said my name, oh yeah, Manahil, the person in NABS, like that's all I was known for. So I was getting very nervous about stepping away from kind of the big thing that was, what I tied a lot of my identity in the Federation to for a long time. And it took me, a while to try and kind of figure out what I was and what my place in the Federation was beyond NABS. Again, I mentioned about I am so happy for the people that immediately find their place in their local affiliates. But the truth is, and I do want to highlight that sometimes that, you know, fit doesn't come instantly and it takes some work. So, a big skill that I think is important is talking to people, right? So, a big thing that I found in NABS that I did is you get to meet a lot of people, right? Whether that is you're in your local student division, whether you're in the national student division, there are so many people everywhere, whether that be leadership, other people on the boards from so many different states that have had so many different experiences. So, a big thing I did when I stepped down is talk to a lot of the mentors I've cultivated from all different states, all different experiences, and really ask them, I feel lost. I don't know where I fit in the Federation. I don't know what I'm meant to do. I don't know who I am outside being a student, right? And I looked at maybe the other divisions that we have, right? That was my step one. Okay. I am I don't want to be a lawyer, so that division's out. I'm not an educator, so that division's out. So going down the list of divisions, I didn't see myself fit in those either. And if you do feel like you fit in those, that I think is a great step. Getting involved in a division, a group committee that aligns to your interests is great. Um, but again, I still found that I didn't fit in that criteria, which made me even more nervous. And then through talking to people, and thankfully we had a change of leadership in my local affiliate. And because of that, I was able to have more conversations um, with them again, like slowly try to make myself a little establish myself a little more in my local affiliate. And from there, talking to the president, because again, you come away from NABS with a lot of leadership skills already. I don't know. I encourage a lot of students when they're in NABS. NABS is your training ground. You can do anything, throw anything against the wall, and if you fail, who cares, right? Because that is an experience that you can build on and do better next time. But because you had all that training, um, and all this like trial and error, talking to people in leadership, they see that, they will, see your potential and really try and help make you fit wherever you feel like you can. So again, through the conversations, through the mentorship I've had from various different affiliate leadership, I think I was able to kind of find more so my place in my affiliate, which is really exciting. And then back to again nationally, finding interests that I had. I realize I really love. I was going through the job hunt at the time. And so employment was something very important to me. Reached out to some people on the employment committee and helped out that way. So I think cultivating your relationships when you're a student is super important because I would say anytime, but especially when you're young, everyone wants to talk to you. So really take advantage of that, I would say.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I've found that too, when I've sort of angled towards getting involved in, things that aren't NABs, is I think people are just so excited to have people who are excited to be involved. So yeah, thank you. Stephanie, I'm gonna restate the question and then pass it off to you. But yeah, talk about how any of your personal strengths, skills, interests, talk about how you use those to find your current place in the NFB.
I'd love to. When I first really starting to get involved with the NFB, especially locally in the local chapter, when I first joined, we had a huge chapter where a lot of our chapter leaders were well known people in the Federation who became friends. And at that time, it seemed like either a really long time off or like it wasn't going to be possible to maybe have a leadership role because we had so many dynamic people in the group that are well known around the country. But I still was involved. I participated in chapter meetings. Some quarters I had class and wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I was able to participate in other events for those quarters because I was on the quarter system at the time. And throughout that time, just kept building those relationships locally and nationally through the educators of blind children and different groups like that. And over time, I was able to help more in our chapter. And after a variety of events, I was asked to be secretary of our chapter, which at first caught me off guard. But I agreed to it and I loved every minute of it. Taking minutes can be stressful at first, but after figuring out the best strategy, it became a lot easier. And then just a couple years later, a little over a year ago, was when I was asked to be president of our chapter. And it was a very hard and loaded question at the time because the person who was president at the time was going through some severe health issues. And so she had to step down from that role. And so I agreed, thinking that it might be temporary, but not knowing what the future held. But unfortunately, just a few months after that, that person passed. And so, not at the time, it was hard because she was mentoring me in that first year of me serving as president. And that was a hard transition and big shoes to fill. But I feel like throughout the year, I have grown, and it has been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I think one more thing that Stephanie made me think of, and also kind of reflecting more so on the question and kind of a big purpose of doing this podcast. It's terribly common for students to leave the Federation after they graduate. Like, after they're no longer students, you've been in the student division for a while. Back to, again, my story. My whole identity was being a student. Um, and after that's gone, a lot of people can easily think that there's nothing for them in the Federation, or where do we fit, right? I think Stephanie gave some, like, great examples of, like, how she was able to get involved. I know I mentioned a bunch of different things in my first response. Another thing I'll also add, though, is whatever you envision, want to do, or want the Federation to be for you, I am a strong believer that you can make that happen. For example, I think, again, I left NABS, and a big thing for me is now I'm going through early career stage, and I noticed a huge gap in early career and young professionals in the Federation. So a big project that I'm working on is bringing more connectivity to early career professionals in the Federation, and it's a huge cry that's going on nationally. So a big thing that I want to encourage people to do is, if you don't find your fit right now, if you can't, like, imagine it, you don't see it, but you see a space where you think you can make impact, I really encourage you to do that. The Federation is an amazing place, and you've spent, like, so much of your college career for it. Please don't just make it a college thing you forget about in 2 years. I think there's so much impact you can have long term if you stay and continue bringing your bright mind to whatever it is you want to do.
I love that. Thank you. Stephanie, you gave some really great segues into another question that I have for you, and then Manahil, I'll get you with another question after that. But so we have a lot of overachievers who listen to this podcast. So you talked about stepping into a leadership role. What advice do you have for listeners of this podcast who want to be in a leadership role? What qualities or experiences should they focus on developing early on in order to reach that goal?
That's a wonderful question. First, I would start with, don't get discouraged with who is currently in leadership, and simply get involved. The best leaders are also servants. And this is an organization where we all work together. whether we have a leadership role or not. Some roles might be smaller than others, and find a place not just in a chapter or division, but also figure out what skills you have to bring to the table. Whatever you are maybe contributing to in NABS, how can you bring that to your chapter or division? Were you a part of fundraising, membership? Our affiliates and divisions and chapters also do fundraising, have membership enticements and different things going on, different events throughout the year. Figure out what and how you want to be involved and start just doing it. You don't have to be a leader to step in and help. Sometimes just having an idea and being able to help present and make it happen will help not only your chapter but and help other members see how you can contribute to the group as a whole. And over time, things will come up, and being able to network and talk to people like we've talked about throughout this podcast and making those connections and, and those mentoring, that is what will help you be a strong leader.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me, I was a theater kid when I was in high school. And it kind of reminds me of something I would hear a lot, which is there are no small parts and you can shine in any role and people will notice, you know? So thank you. Manahil, I have a different question for you. And this is my last question of the evening. So you have talked about being in NABS and that being a huge part of your identity, and then moving on from NABS and stepping into a role, in as you enter your professional stage of life. And you've talked about how you made that transition, but do you have any advice for how to sustain that engagement with the Federation beyond just transitioning into that role? Because I feel like NABS, with the nature of the school year, it's like there's always, a new goal or, the end of the semester. But I think things might look a little bit differently once you're beyond that phase of life.
Yeah, no, great question. I think for me, as you said this, right? NAVs, especially whether you're involved nationally or student division, locally, it's a lot of go go go, right? Really high energy, really short timelines, really late nights. Like things are moving really fast, and I would say a lot of what got me through NAVs in a lot of ways was adrenaline, because there's just something always happening, a fire you always have to take care of, et cetera, et cetera. So again, super fun, but really intense and really high energy. I would say, there's obviously other parts of the Federation that are like that, especially the more you climb up into leadership. But in especially when you're transitioning into going from being a student where you have a little bit more of a flexible schedule to a working professional where you have a very strict schedule. I think it becomes harder to be as intensely involved as I was in NABS in the Federation as I am now. Don't get me wrong, I still am pretty involved now. However, I think things work a little differently. For example, I was working on a project with the employment committee, and I remember we were planning it um a year in advance, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember when we did regional seminars in 3 months. And so it I think really figuring out how to manage the intensity, I think, is a good thing, because your life post grad is going to be really intense in and of itself. I think a lot of people, when they leave NABS, sometimes, depending on how intense their run was, they can feel a little burnt out, a little tired, a little etc. And I think the hope is, and I feel like a lot of leadership nowadays is doing this too. They don't want to burn you out. So therefore, I think taking it slow and working on things that you find interesting, whether like your involvement is just attending your local chapter meeting once a month, that's good enough. If that's what you need to, stay involved, but maybe not plunge plunge in head first, right? So I really encourage people to do that if they don't feel ready to take on responsibility or even know what they think their responsibility should be. I know I did that for a bit. I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to take my, my next step in what I wanted to get involved with. I didn't know what to do. I was also heavily focused on the job search at the time and getting used to my, new reality of not being a student, etc. So honestly, I didn't have the same time for federation work as I did before, but I don't think that means you need to kind of ghost the federation. That also being said, no one is going to be mad at you if you do need to take a break for a while because you are getting, work is really intense, or you're really, you want to take a break to really, again, get acclimated to the new city you're moving to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The federation shouldn't feel like a chore. Your involvement shouldn't feel like a chore. It should feel like something you want to do, you feel energized by, and something that would help you. And if it's not feeling like that right now, I think that's a perfectly good reason to take a step back. There have been so many successful people that have taken steps back and come back at various times. I think the biggest thing to know is there's always a home for you here, and that's all about building those relationships and feeling like you are able to come back. So again, at minimum, just joining your local chapter, but at maximum, you can kind of do anything you want. And if a break is necessary, feel free to take it. I think the federation is always here for you. So
I just wanted to kind of emphasize the because I mean, this is also a good life skill too. Anytime you go through a time where you're sort of switching your roles, like in this case, going from NABS to no longer being a student to no longer being a student in the Federation, it's easy to compare your experiences and your involvement, but you don't be discouraged if your experiences and involvement are not the same as when you were a student. Your involvement will look different. It might slow down based on your work schedule, like previously mentioned. You may not be in a leadership role for a little while. You may be participating here or there, nationally, locally, whatever the case may be. But don't get discouraged by comparing past involvement and past experiences, whether you need to take a break or even just participating minimally without taking a complete break. It doesn't have to look exactly how it was when you were in NABS to be helpful and for you to be successful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's so important to remember because NABS, like it has been mentioned, can be intense and it's in short bursts, but really the important involvement is for the long haul. And so, it's important to remember not to get burnt out on this work that is, we're in it for the long haul. This is for our lifetime. So thank you. So thank you both for being in conversation about this. I really think that it can be really overwhelming to graduate from NABS and move on, and it looks different for everyone. The involvement and the process looks different for everyone, but I really hope that folks leave this conversation today after listening to this with confidence approaching their involvement beyond NABS. And I really, really think this conversation has been helpful because it's been helpful for me because these are questions that I have had. So thank you both so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Izzy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you to everybody listening. This has been such an incredible conversation, and we'll talk to you next time.
This episode of the NABS Now podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Blind Students, a proud division of the National Federation of the Blind. It was hosted by Izzy Bailey. It was produced by Benjamin Grelk and edited by Benjamin Grelk and Mackenzie Love. A special thanks to our guests for this episode, Manal Joffrey and Stephanie Martin. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more awesome content.